All right, we are ready to start.
Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. Happy cold Thursday, January 16th. Welcome to the first installment of the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council webinar series of 2025. So thank you all so much for joining us on this chilly morning. We are very excited to see you all here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Hannah Imagine Shaw. Everybody calls me Imagine. I am on the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council board, and I am also the Tennessee State Director for the International Society of Arboriculture. I am joined here today with Katie Donaldson and Kevin Bolger of TUFC, and we are also joined by Skip Kincaid, our speaker for today. Skip is going to be speaking on a new way to look at arborists today. And just a quick synopsis and background on Skip. Skip is currently the executive director of the ISA Southern Chapter. He helps over 2,000 arborists within the Southeast with educational opportunities for professional credentialing. He is a 40-year veteran in the world of arboriculture. And while retirement may happen someday for Skip, which I doubt knowing Skip, he still gets a kick out of sharing what he knows with people that also thirst for tree knowledge. So, in addition to his duties with the Southern Chapter, Skip also does consulting and training for arborists, engineers, architects, and attorneys. And if you have any interest in meeting any of us, really, I just wanted to quickly promote before we start the conversation today that the ISA Southern Chapter Conference is going to be occurring in Memphis, Tennessee this year on April 7th through 11th. That is the official conference days, but pre-conference, there's going to be a prescription pruning class by Dr. Ed Gilman. There's going to be track courses. There's going to be a climbing competition and also a climbing class for those that want to get tree workers certified through the ISA. On top of that, TUFC is a co-sponsor of this event, and we will have Tennessee-based speakers at this event. So for those of you that are in the Southeast, even if you're not, take a chance, come on down. We would love to have you and see you. But speaking of CEUs, I'm going to pass it over to Katie to do some housekeeping before we start the conversation today.
Okay, let me share my screen. Good morning, everyone. If you are here today to receive ISA CEUs or SAF CFEs, please make sure you're registered and that you've paid the $10. If you are a TUFC member or you're just a general attendee and you do not want these continuing education credits, you do not need to pay the $10. And to make it easier for us to reconcile the data at the end of these webinars, please make sure that your full name is showing. And if you called in using your cell phone, how you can change it is by going to the Participants tab, clicking on, I think there are three dots, and it gives you the option to rename yourself, and then you can rename yourself according to the name that you use to register. So please do that. That just makes it easier for us to send in that information at the end of these webinars and to get you those continuing education credits. Also, during the presentation, if you have any questions that you think of, please enter those in the chat, and at the end, we will have a Q&A session to answer as many questions as we possibly can. And I believe that's all the information. Oh, one other thing. For those continuing education credits, we will also show a QR code at the end that you can scan, and I will put a link in the chat that you can click. That's another way to just kind of tally you as someone who wants those continuing education credits. And we'll show that slide at the end. All right, I think that's everything for me.
Okay, I'll go ahead and kick it off here on this end then, Katie, if we're ready. Okay, great. Thanks everybody for showing up today. You can tell from my background that this is a virtual background. This is not current. I wish it was. I like springtime in the Ozarks way better than the wintertime. I just spent 3 days at this exact spot behind me, and then yeah, they're still dealing with about 8 to 10 inches of snow and a couple inches of ice. So, and I know a lot of you are as well. So fun days, right? Oh, Quebec, yeah. So I'm sure you guys are dealing with some snow as well. I just saw Barbara comment in the chat box. Um, so Katie mentioned CEUs. I know CEUs are incredibly valuable to everybody. So, a couple of different opportunities to make sure that you register your attendance today so that you can get your CEUs. But I'm sure Tennessee Urban Forestry Council will make sure that you get that. Um, Imagine did mention the Southern Chapter Conference. I'm the executive director of Southern Chapter. We are really cranking it up this year for the conference in Memphis. We know that the international is in New Zealand this year, which is a great destination. If you can afford to go, I would go. But if you can't, if you want to stay here in the lower 48, Memphis is very central, and it's a full week. Normally it's only a couple of days, but we're going a full week. We got all the stuff that Imagine mentioned. Um, Great presenters, Dr. Gilman, Tom Smiley, Kim Coder. I mean, the list goes on and on. So we hope that you'll take time. I'll have a link at the end of my presentation to find information. Just go to the Southern Chapter website, and that's easy to find. It's isasouthern.com. Or I'm sorry, .org, O-R-G, isasouthern.org, and that will get you there. All right, I am going to share my screen, and we will get the presentation underway. I'm hopeful that is, it says participants can now see your application. So I'm going to assume that you all can see this,
Looks good.
and just kind of carry on from there. Um, the topic today is is kind of a different one. There's not a lot of science here. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a scientist. Um, I teach a lot of classes on tree risk and other parts of arboriculture, but I'm not the big science guy. And so this one is not very scientific, but I think it will um, be very relevant for a lot of you that are professional arborists. I know that, these webinars attract a lot of people that are homeowners, or we call them lay people in the arborist world, those of you that may not be professional practicing arborists. So I wanted to, I always like to have a topic that has some wide appeal. And I've done this presentation with other groups, and it seems to have a lot of appeal. So I hope I hope you enjoy it today. And it's really just, I call it a new way to look at arborists. Um, a lot of people, even those of us in the field of arboriculture, we really don't understand how wide and how varied our profession is. A lot of people, when you think of an arborist, if I talk to a homeowner, some of them don't even know what arborist means. It's just, oh, you mean the tree guy, or that tree person, um, the person who climbs my tree and cuts branches and or cuts them down. And that's kind of their view of tree people or arborists. But we're a lot more than that, right? So we're going to take a look at how varied and different we can be, but again, how similar we can be as well. So let's dive into this. Again, it's pretty simple stuff, but stay with me on this little journey here. So I guess the first thing to do is just kind of establish, well, what is arboriculture? What is an arborist? Okay. And there are a lot of different definitions. If you look out there, in dictionaries and maybe even some professional publications, they will tell you that arboriculture is all about the cultivation of trees and shrubs. Okay? That's seems pretty normal, right? Um, and then there are some definitions that go a little further. The cultivation, management, and study, little science here, of individual trees, shrubs, vines, and other perennial woody plants. So I want you to notice the word individual, you know, individual trees. This kind of separates arborists from foresters, okay? Foresters manage a forest, um, a large population of trees. Arborists tend to kind of be tree specific. What's going on with this tree? How do I make sure this tree is planted properly? How do I select the right tree? Now, there are arborists who do manage a population of trees. Maybe they work for a park system or a municipality. Um, and sometimes those arborists may refer to themselves as urban foresters. Okay, so a lot of crossover here, but stay with me with this arboriculture thing. We tend to try to stay focused on an individual tree, all right? Um, so, you know, cultivation of trees and shrubs, chiefly for timber or ornamental purposes. So now we're kind of throwing arboriculture in with this forestry thing, all right? And one of the reasons I'm okay with this, and again, I'm not doing this to confuse everybody. I don't know that we necessarily call it urban timber, but there is a very strong movement within arboriculture and a lot of urban forestry type settings to make use or salvage a lot of urban trees that get cut down. In the past, they were either landfilled. Now, a lot of areas don't allow that. So a lot of this stuff is ground up for mulch or compost, which is great. It's a great reuse of this material. But there's an even higher or better use for a lot of these urban trees to become lumber. A lot of places are operating now in urban areas where they take urban trees and they actually mill them. They run them through sawmills and they're making lumber that woodworkers or even some home builders and contractors are able to use for a wide variety of purposes. So, again, now we're looking at arboriculture in a little bit wider arena. Okay. Um, Now here's a definition that really starts to kind of get super detailed. Arboriculture is the art, practice, and science concerned with the care, cultivation, maintenance, management, and study of individual species and types of plants, trees, shrubs, and vines. Okay. A little wordsmithing there, I guess. And I think this is the definition that actually appears in the ISA glossary of terms. All right. The practice and study of the care of trees and other woody plants in the landscape. All right. And then that ISA glossary of terms goes on to define an arborist, the person who practices arboriculture. So let's start to look at this definition of arborist, a professional who professes or possesses the technical competence through experience and related training to provide for or supervise the management of trees and other woody plants in the residential, urban, and public landscapes. All right. So let's let's kind of take a look at that definition in a bullet point list. All right. So an arborist, and a lot of you arborists will be able to relate to this list. Okay. We're professional. Arborists are professional. Now, what does that mean? Well, we may have professional credentials. We may be a certified arborist or some other credential that means that we have some education, okay? Um, which could also mean that we're technically competent. We have studied, we have learned the processes involved in various arboricultural practices, how to make a pruning cut, which limbs do I prune, how to diagnose a disease. We have some technical competence. We're experienced, we're trained, okay, and we care for trees and landscapes. All right. So this is a pretty good way to kind of break down what an arborist does. Now, I would be willing to bet that those of you that are here today that are professional arborists, maybe you're a climber, maybe you're up in the trees almost every day. So you're thinking of each of these bullet points in terms of what you do for your job. All right. Um, but like I said, there are a lot of different types of arborists. So each of you are going to be thinking about each of these bullet points in a little bit different way. But I just want to make sure that you think about all of the different ways. I am not going to go through this entire list. Obviously, we wouldn't have time, but take a look at this list. And I don't even know that this is a complete list, but this is a list of things that I could come up with that are different things that arborists do, you know. And some of these first items on the list, again, are what some of the general public might think of when they think of an arborist. Oh, that's the person that's up in the tree. That's the person who prunes and removes trees. Maybe they climb, maybe they use lift devices. Um, Maybe it's the supervisor or the manager. Maybe it's the owner of the company. Uh, and then you go on down the list, and now we start looking at diagnosing health issues. Well, wait a minute. You mean an arborist can come out and look at my tree and tell me what's wrong and diagnose issues and give me a prognosis on what they think it might do and give me some prescriptions for treatment. So we call these plant healthcare professionals or plant healthcare arborists. Um, there are arborists. Take a look at this bullet point. There are arborists that work with engineers, architects, developers, and city officials to develop tree protection plans on development sites. When I first started consulting years ago and I started working with engineers and architects, they were they were shocked. They couldn't believe that there were arborists who did this sort of work. And not many arborists do, but a lot of us work very closely with these people. I'm not an engineer, I'm not an architect, but I work right along with them when we're putting together a development plan. Just like drawing the detailed drawings of where the buildings are going to go and all the structural issues with the building, grading and runoff and all those kinds of things. The tree protection plan becomes a working document on a construction site. Um, there's another one that some people in the general public aren't aware of. A lot of arborists develop plans and operations to manage vegetation on right-of-ways. When you turn the lights on or you turn your heat up and it's electric heat, um, that electricity is coming from somewhere, right? And sometimes from a far distance away. That electricity has to get to you. And the people who manage that system have to make sure that there isn't vegetation that's going to interfere with the electricity or fall on the wires and cut off the flow of electricity. So these are people that are very specialized in the utility field. They're the ones that make sure that you have, continual electrical service. Now, it's an area that obviously creates a little bit of a rub sometimes. People get angry when trees are pruned or removed along right of ways. Like, oh my gosh, you're over pruning my tree, and they get all upset. But then in the wintertime, when the ice hits and they fall on the lines and the electricity's out for a week, then they get upset and they say, well, you should have pruned those ahead of time. You should have known. So being a utility arborist can sometimes be a no-win scenario. You do the best job that you can. And these people, and a lot of people don't realize that people that do that kind of work are trained professionals. There's a science behind how to efficiently manage these right of ways along electrical or utility corridors. And, I can tell you from my 40 years of experience in this business, they're some of the most talented people in the business. So I got over throwing rocks at them a long time ago. I think they do a great job. Um, as we move down the list, now we get into people that work for maybe some type of a public agency, a park district or a municipality. And this is where we start maybe using the term urban forester. An arborist manages hundreds or thousands of trees in an urban setting, so we call them an urban forester. They have to kind of balance all the benefits that these trees provide to our community with maybe the risk of old or dying or weak trees that may need to be addressed or removed. Okay, so there's a science behind all of that. There's a very specific science behind managing trees in these urban settings. Okay. And then we have um, arborists that may work for nonprofits. These are people that may work for a nonprofit that helps a lot of other professional arborists. I work for a nonprofit. I work for the ISA Southern Chapter. Um, Imagine and Katie work for the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council. This is a nonprofit that helps other professionals and also promotes the idea of arboriculture and community forestry and urban forest and urban forestry. So a lot of different types of people in this line of work. You know, this is just a shot of, the climbing world, and just giving you some idea of the danger that's involved. I mean, these are people that go 60, 80 feet up in a tree, but not only that, they got a chainsaw attached to them and they're cutting limbs and parts of the tree while they're up there. Incredibly dangerous, takes a ton of knowledge, skill, and experience. One of the ways that that skill is gained, if we look at these folks on the left here, these are some of the winners from the ISA Southern Chapter tree climbing competition. Um, a lot of these chapters have competitions every year that bring out the best of the best climbers in speed competitions, safety competitions, and they win some pretty cool prizes. One of the best is the winners get part of their expenses paid to go to the international competition. And like I mentioned, the international competition coming up in 2025 is going to be in New Zealand. So it's pretty cool to compete in one of those and be able to travel to another part of the world to compete against other professionals. Pretty cool deal. Um, I mentioned, and I apologize for this cough. I'm getting over a horrible cold, so if you see me disappear from the screen or go silent for a minute, you'll know why. Um, so some of these arborists, some of these professionals are business owners. Maybe they grew up in the field of arboriculture and they just really enjoy, whether it's running a saw or climbing or being a scientist and diagnosing tree issues. They've just really enjoyed it to the point where they said, "Hey, I'm going to start my own company." So now they have to learn those skills to be a business manager and a business owner and a personnel manager. Um, and again, we see this all over the world. This guy in the upper right, this is a guy who started a company that I used to work for. It's Jeff Hansen. He was killed in a plane crash doing his job. He was a private pilot. He was flying back from another office he had, and I owe a lot to this guy. I mean, he taught me a lot as I was coming up through the business. So a lot of these business owners can provide tremendous skill and tremendous benefits. All right. Um, we talked about plant healthcare specialists. These are people who, maybe they don't climb, maybe they don't get up there with the chainsaws, but they really like the science aspect. They like to learn about insects and diseases and tree decay and diagnosing problems and recommending healthcare treatments and so on to improve the health of trees. All right. Another very specialized part of the business. Here's the utility folks I was talking about earlier. You know, a lot of people think, well, how hard could that be? You just go along and you cut trees down that are in the way of the wires. Well, like I mentioned, a lot of this involves public involvement and public communication, letting people know what you're going to do, why you're doing it, why you have to do it to provide continuity of service. Um, they manage some of these areas along these right of ways, even though they're removing vegetation to protect the wires, they're actually enhancing other types of vegetation, maybe for wildlife benefits. They have to be worried about fire issues. We're hearing so much about wildland fires these days. Some of them are caused if we don't manage vegetation along these right of ways correctly. Okay, so very, very detailed, very involved science. I mentioned people who work for public agencies and nonprofits. They're managing large populations of trees. They're educating the public about the benefits of trees. Um, this is a great, great, profession for people in the arboriculture world. Um, this Forest Relief of Missouri, this is an organization I started. It's now going on 30 years. I started this about 30 years ago. It's run by a very dedicated board now, and they do just great and wonderful things. And almost every state has an organization like this that is robust. Tennessee Urban Forestry Council. Um, there's an organization in Arkansas, one in Kentucky, in the Carolinas. They're all over the place, and these people kind of spread the good word. They have to know the science and skills involved in arboriculture, but they also have to be very good at engaging the public and communicating with the public as well. So again, here's this list. It's huge, right? Um, a lot of people, like I said, in the public world, they have no idea that there's this many different types of arborists that do this. I was talking to a neighbor of mine when a utility crew was out pruning some trees, and they were kind of griping and moaning about it. And I said, hey, you know, that's those are arborists. Those people have, you know, they're certified arborists. They know trees. They know what they're doing. And my neighbors were shocked, that these were people with some skills. So you just have to realize that all of us in this field of arboriculture are very different. All right, we're very different, but but we're very much the same. We are all grounded in these 5 bullet points. We're professionals. We're technically competent. We have experience. We've had training. We may even offer training to others. Um, I'm always or have always been so blessed by people who help me along the way, help teach me and show me the way. And now that I'm older, I'm kind of at that point where I get to kind of return that. I get to provide some mentoring for people who are coming along, and it's just as rewarding and refreshing as being out in the field and doing some of the work. It's absolutely fantastic. Um, but we all care for trees. Some people think, oh, they're just a tree cutter, and maybe there are some, who would just much rather drive a chain on a chainsaw into a tree than do anything else. But the majority of us truly care for trees. We're all about trying to manage and care for trees to make our landscapes where we live and work better. Okay. Um, the other thing that's kind of interesting, I get to travel all over the country, all over the world teaching classes. Um, there's a credential that I'll talk about here in a minute called the Tree Risk Assessment Qualification that ISA teaches. I have taught 180 plus of those classes all over the world. So I get to meet arborists from all over the planet. And again, they're all very different. Some of them are utilities, some of them are, public agency, Some of them work for a business. We're all very different. But something that I notice about all arborists, again, whether we are kind of a tree cutter type or whether we're more of a nurturing plant healthcare type person, we are all very much the same and have so much in common. I always kind of joke that, you could have some big gathering of like 300 people, maybe a wedding reception or something, hundreds of people. And if there are two arborists in that crowd, they're going to find each other. There's just something that stands out. They might be standing by the beer cooler, I don't know, but they're going to start talking trees and everybody's going to look at them like they're a little weird, but it's just what we do. Arborists have this bond. We have something in our chromosomes that just, make us all very much the same, even though we all do different things, all right, and have different responsibilities. We all know this. We all know that trees are good. It doesn't even take a professional, but again, most professional arborists, we embrace this, the idea that trees do good things, all right? We understand the technical benefits of trees. We understand that they shade buildings, they can provide energy savings, they reduce stormwater runoff, they improve air quality, they make our world look better. We understand all of these technical benefits about trees. We know that we can actually reduce the cost for building new infrastructure like stormwater drain lines and so on, maybe just by planting trees instead of building new concrete drainways and so forth. So trees do all these good things, but we also know that trees can create some risk. Trees get old, branches fall off, trees fall over. I do a lot of expert witness work with attorneys. When there are tree failures, trying to figure out the cause and the why and so on. So if we're someone who manages a population of trees, we kind of have to be able to balance all of this good, all these benefits with some of the risk, some of the negatives of trees. I mean, we could eliminate risk very easily. We just cut them all down, right? But nobody wants that. We want lots of trees. We want all the benefits of trees, but we have to balance that with the risk and some of the management costs of dealing with them as well. So that's a specialty that some arborists have as well. Um, but we're kind of, I don't know if I want to call it an identity crisis. I hate to sound inflammatory because there's so much in the news these days and so much that we hear, that just creates worry and, oh my gosh, this is a crisis. But I just want to make you aware that in the field of arboriculture, we do have some issues because, and it's one of the reasons why I like to do this presentation. I find that some arborists don't really fully understand what other arborists do. They may not even value them truly as arborists. So I think it's important that we all embrace all of these aspects of arboriculture and, you know, make sure that the public understands that, hey, my job is climbing trees and I run a chainsaw and I prune branches. But, that person who's here identifying insects and disease and root issues on your trees, or that person who's out managing the vegetation along your power lines, those are professional arborists as well. So I just want to make sure that we all kind of understand this because part of this crisis, again, if you will, is that the public just has a little bit of difficulty understanding it sometimes. Um, you know, it's either an all or nothing. We got to save every tree, or oh, I don't want any trees near my house. I don't like raking leaves. And so we have to be able to kind of communicate to people about trees and who we are as professionals. Um, One of the best ways that I do this, again, with neighbors and family, whatever, I recommend this book to them, the book on the right, The Hidden Life of Trees. Um, if you take one thing home from this webinar, whether you're a professional arborist or a homeowner, whatever, um, get this book. You know, download this, listen to it, or buy the book. It's a great, great read. The Hidden Life of Trees. Um, it gets a little touchy-feely, but I can pretty much guarantee that if you're a hardcore, you know, science person, it's all about science, you're going to appreciate some of the spiritual things that come out of this book, and you're also going to appreciate the science about how trees communicate and how they react to changes in their environment. They literally do communicate with each other. So it's a pretty eye-opening book, written in very simple, you know, terms. You don't have to be an arborist to read it. Uh, Non-arborists recommend it and read it and love it. So get that book, The Hidden Life of Trees. Um, so, as arborists, we're constantly working to let the public know who we are, what we do, the value of trees, why it's important to understand trees that are in our community. And if we see something that we don't understand, that we're here. Arborists are here. We can answer your questions. And for the most part, we're pretty easy to find, whether we work for a public agency or work for a tree service. We're an email or a phone call or a text message away. It's pretty easy, but we got to keep working at it. We got to update the way that we communicate. Southern chapter, ISA Southern chapter, we're big on social media. Um, we have a staff position, and her title is media director. She she handles all of our media. The a lot of the stuff going on the website, our Facebook page, Instagram, all of it. If you're not, if you haven't found, if you haven't looked for us on Facebook or Instagram, look us up. It's real easy. Southern Chapter ISA. Um, we post almost every week. Well, actually, we do post every week, sometimes more often, with news about what's going on in the chapter. But sometimes it's just tree stuff, just little tidbits of feel good tree stuff. Um, the chapter and a lot of us as arborists, we try to stay involved with programs like Tree City USA. This is a program that promotes managing trees in our cities and caring for trees in our cities. So we have to do better at communicating. And I got to be honest with you, I'm not sure why I threw this slide into this presentation. I was just so shocked. I was searching for some images that dealt with trees and communicating about trees, and I came across this image. I don't know who this guy is. I'm assuming he's an arborist, but um, I just thought it was kind of a one of those whoa kind of slides. So whether you want to sit your butt down and have a conversation with a tree, I don't know, but at least understand and think about these values of trees and arborists and communicating that with others every chance that you get. um, a lot of tree services now, they got their website, they got their advertising on their trucks. Find ways to communicate that we are professionals. We're not just these chainsaw wielding cowboys and cowgirls that go whacking away at trees. All right. We got to be able to communicate not only to the general public and not only to people that may be a client, but when we project this professionalism, it helps us to attract better employees. That's another kind of crisis that we're in the field, is finding people who want to do this work and stay with it and make it a profession. Now, you know, a lot of companies have developed very good systems of training and promoting and kind of bringing along their employees. And most people that get into this line of work, as long as they're comfortable with the physical nature of some of it, they find that it actually pays pretty well. Um, this is not a low pay industry, okay? This is a very skilled industry that pays well. And so we need to project that as arborists, we need to project that so that we can attract people, whether it's high school age or even before. Like, hey, this is something I want to do. Okay. We need to come across with very professional proposals, very professional information on our websites, that makes us look good. All right. So, again, weird graphics here, but this is stuff I came across when I was searching about, communication and so on. We got on the one hand, you know, this Hollywood guy saying, just be comfortable with who you are, and there's something to be said for that. We should be comfortable with who we are, right? But then on the other hand, we got John Bon Jovi, saying, don't get too comfortable because you might miss the opportunity to become who you want to be. All right. I don't, I'm not one of these people that hangs inspirational stuff on my walls, but I just thought this this little difference of opinion here or way to phrase things is something that I think we need to kind of keep track of. We need to be comfortable with who we are as arborists, that we're professionals, but we also need to make sure that we're still kind of engaged with the whole arborist community so that we can become better at what we do. All right. Become a little bit better. Don't be afraid to change and take that step. All right. So, in terms of taking steps, professional steps, um, ISA, the International Society of Arboriculture, has developed some nice professional steps, if you will, for professional arborists. Um, this is, I don't want to call it the introductory credential, but this is kind of our first level credential for people that have at least 2 years of experience in arboriculture. They've studied and they're able to pass a 200 question exam. It's a pretty long exam. Um, but they can become what we call a certified arborist, all right? And they have to earn CEUs to maintain that certification. Again, that's why a lot of you are here. It's like, hey, I can earn a CEU by listening to Skip for an hour, okay? So you earn these CEUs, these continuing education credits, to show that you are continually educating or re-educating yourself to stay or become a better arborist. Okay. That's the whole purpose of these professional credentials. Now, once you become a certified arborist, there's other ways you can go. You might specialize in one of these other fields. There's a they I don't they call it a certified tree climber now, but there's a credential specifically for people who work in trees. There's a specific credential for people who work in the utility field. There are a special credential for people who work as municipal arborists. This recently changed. The name recently changed. This is now called the urban forestry specialist. And if you're a certified arborist and you really want to kind of jump to the head of the class, if you will, about 1 or 2% of certified arborists do some extra study and they take a very long exam and they become what's called a board certified master arborist. Okay. Um, this is kind of the top of the heap, if you will. Um, it's a great credential to look for if you're a homeowner, but honestly, any of these credentials are valuable and show that the person that you're considering has some expertise. Now, there are other credentials that we call qualifications that can really zoom in even more specifically. This one right here, this is the ISA track qualification or tree risk assessment qualification. If you have a tree that you're worried about, maybe your neighbor had a tree that fell and you're like, "Hey, I got a tree almost just like this in my backyard. I really should have a professional come look at this and give me some idea about the risk that might be present in this tree. Am I worrying about nothing? Is it really not that bad? Or am I missing something and this tree's ready to fall over?" So a person with this qualification, with the tree risk assessment qualification, is in a little better position to assess this tree. They'll use a standard common protocol or process to review the tree and then give you an idea about the risk associated with the tree. All right. So again, I keep throwing qualifications and credentials up here, but there are a lot. Maybe as a company, you want to be able to show that your tree service company is kind of above, you know, the professional or reaching those professional standards. So an organization called the Tree Care Industry Association has developed this credential called the accredited, tree service credential. So you can show that your company has met certain levels of professionalism. They also have something called the Certified Tree Care Safety Professional. This is for crews that are out working in the field, and it's a way to show that they've gone above and beyond in terms of their knowledge and training and preparation for either preventing injuries or how to deal with injuries that take place in the field. Um, there is something called TPAC, which is Tree and Plant Appraisal Qualification. This is where people that specialize in the field of calculating the value, the dollar value of a tree for like insurance purposes or legal purposes, something like that. Um, we can calculate the value that trees bring us in terms of energy savings. Those are annual benefits, but an appraisal might include, hey, this truck hit my tree and killed it. It was an 8-inch diameter oak tree in my front yard. What's it worth? What's it going to take to replace this? You necessarily can't go out and buy another tree the same size. So this appraisal process, this appraisal qualification means that you have an arborist who follows accepted standards in calculating the value of a tree. Um, I had a question come into the chat box from Colin. What do you think of the Society of American Foresters new credential, certified urban and community forester credential? Well, Colin, I'll tell you this. I've been a member of SAF since I got out of college. Um, I'm a certified forester with SAF, have been forever. I'm an old dude, right? Um, some people might look at this new credential from SAF. In fact, some people look at any of these credentials as, oh, this is a money grab. They're just doing this so that people will sign up, pay their money, and be able to put a feather in their hat. And that's fine. There are some people that are going to think that, and I'm not sure there's a lot we can do to change that, except maybe a presentation like this to educate them a little bit. I think any organization that develops a credential, as long as it's well thought out, as long as it's professionally developed, I know I'm kind of double using the term, but SAF put a lot of thought into that new credential. I was actually on the ISA board of directors years ago when SAF first started talking about this. So there was a lot of dialogue. It's not a it's not a competition. They're not trying to take people away. It's something in addition to, is the way that I look at it. Um, you know, the Florida chapter now has a credential called PPQ, that Imagine talked about earlier, the prescription pruning qualification. And some people like roll their eyes like, oh my gosh, another credential. Um, But again, I can tell you, I know the work that Florida chapter put into developing PPQ, and it was a lot of work. Took them years to develop it. They have a very, rigorous, proper testing program. Um, and going through PPQ, when you come out of that, it means you're better at assessing the pruning needs on a tree. You're better at identifying what should be pruned and what should be left alone. And you're better at writing the proposal or the recommendations for what should be pruned. It's an excellent, excellent new credential. Is it for everybody? No. Um, some people say, well, when you develop a new credential, that means I just got to pay more money and get on board and be like everybody else. And it doesn't necessarily mean that. Um, I've held a lot of credentials through my, professional career, and they've all been valuable to me. It adds to my knowledge base and makes me a better arborist. So, my hat is off to SAF for doing this. I don't look at it as competition. I wave the ISA flag big time, but I like new credentials. I think it's just different opportunities for different people. Okay. I hope that didn't sound too, you know, suck up and nice. Um, but I mean it. I really do think it's going to be valuable. All right. So I'm going to close this out fairly quick here. Just kind of reiterate this idea that if you're already a certified arborist, think about becoming BCMA, about board certified master arborist. It's not just for consulting types and, research type people. Um, it's not, I don't want to make it sound like it's easy because it's not. It takes some work, but it's not that bad of a test. Not that bad of a test. Um, Rosalind just threw in a question. I'll address this real quick. And then my guess is you guys may start jumping in questions and we'll kind of address some of those at the end. But Rosalind wants me to address something about the gender breakdown of your profession. Do women also climb trees? Absolutely not, Rosalind. We don't allow women to climb trees. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Um, I'm glad that you asked the question because yes, absolutely do they climb trees. I will tell you, and I kind of get guys that will jump on me for this. A lot of our profession, a lot of being an arborist, we think it's just about the tree, but a lot of it is the communication, our ability to communicate with the tree owner or the general public, if we're involved in utility arboriculture. I will be honest with you. I think women do a better job of communicating. And so in a lot of ways, I think they make better arborists than guys do, you know. Um, as far as climbing, you don't need, you know, you don't need to be a weightlifter. You got to have some upper body strength. I will tell you, climbing trees is for younger people. Again, I can say that because I'm old. Um, most climbers don't go much past their 30s. Some do, and they're awesome. They stay in shape. But there is absolutely, or should absolutely be no impediment to women wanting to get into this field or climbing. None. Now, again, the industry for years was, kind of a good old boy network, but I think a lot of that has broken down. There are still going to be cases, unfortunately, but it is a field ripe for growing the presence of women in the field. Same thing with, you know, minorities. A lot of folks, say, well, why don't we see more? All we see are, you know, people that, come from other countries that are climbing the trees and doing the work. That's not necessarily true. A lot of them do because a lot of them are skilled. In a lot of our urban areas in the U.S., we're promoting this field more and we're attracting more. Again, I don't know the right term. I don't know as far as being politically correct minorities. Um, but our this profession is ripe for that kind of growth. and welcomes it. And we see a lot of programs that try to promote that. Spanish speaking individuals, Southern Chapter, Georgia Arborist Association, developing a lot of materials for Spanish speaking audiences. Women's Tree Climbing Workshop. Mark, thank you very much. ISA Southern Chapter supports them financially, and we promote what they do. The Levangis, for those of you that know the Levangi twins, they're absolutely awesome. And all the other people that are involved with Women's Tree Climbing Workshop. But yeah, do check it out. It's a great way. And you can get scholarships for those events. Yeah. Women's Tree Climbing Workshop costs a little bit of money. I think it's a week-long camp, but they do scholarships. The money that we give them, they turn around and use that to provide scholarships for women to attend. Okay. Um, Man, I got to move because we got about a minute left. So again, the idea with these credentials, you can start out very general, then you can start to get specialized, and then can become even more specialized in our field. Okay. Lots of ways to grow professionally and develop. All right. The point I want to make with a lot of this is, and this is for the non-arborists that are in attendance today. Um, I think we just need to do better. And in my 40 years, I've seen tremendous growth in this, but we need to continue to let people know that we are educated professionals. Doesn't necessarily mean we have a 4-year degree. I used to have high regard for college degrees, and I still do. I have a master's degree. But I think a lot of people that get into this field don't have a degree, and I don't think you necessarily need one. I think you can still learn a lot of the science through the trade and through a lot of these professional development programs. All right. Um, there are ways to do that now by promoting that arboriculture is truly a profession. For those of you that have not been to this outsidecareers.org website, it is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. You've got to go visit this. Um, outsidecareers.org. And then there are also apprentice programs that are growing in our field right now. So I'm gonna kind of leave it at that. Jump right here to the end. Don't forget about our conference. Go to isasouthern.org. You'll find the information about the conference, and I really hope that we see you in Memphis. So that's all that I have, Katie. Sorry about rushing a little bit at the end. I just wanted to make sure that I got those great questions answered.
Skip, thank you so much for broadening our perspective on arboriculture career possibilities. This was a great presentation.
I'm just glad I didn't cough through the whole thing. I appreciate you guys putting up with it and let me try to get into focus, grab a sip of tea every once in a while. So thank you.
But before we kind of lead off to any other questions, I did want to ask the if you could talk about the Trees Are Good website. That's something that's very useful for people that are seeking out an arborist, or if you're a certified arborist, this is where you can have your information posted. Skip, I know you know a lot about that, so please take it away.
Yeah, the Trees Are Good website, I mean, it kind of sells itself, and it's just as you described. If people that are not professional arborists want to learn a little bit about trees, or how do I pick the right tree, or how do I find an arborist? That's a big question homeowners have. How do I find an arborist that I know, is any good? Well, there's obviously no guarantees, but one way is to go to this treesaregood.org website. This was developed by ISA, and it has great information about trees that's not too technical. It's geared towards the general public. It will help you to find somebody that has one of these professional credentials so that maybe you can do a little online shopping ahead of time. It'll provide contact info so you can call them direct. But it's just a great source of information for the general public. Um, I saw somebody type a question in. Oh, Kevin just in the chat box just put it up. treesaregood.org. Great, great tool. Um, so I saw a question fly across about how does somebody who's new to this industry, um, how do you get an opportunity to spend time with a seasoned veteran and learn? Um, and that's a tough one because you're out there, you got to work, you got to make some money. So, how do you take time to just go be mentored by another professional? And I will tell you one of the best ways to do it. And again, I know I'm advertising here, but attend the conference in Memphis. Come a couple of days early. Our tree climbing competition will be April 5th and 6th. Even if you feel like, hey, I'm not good enough to compete, you never know. Sign up and compete, or just plan to attend. It's free to go to the tree climbing competition. Go to the competition, hang out with other climbers. It's probably the most welcoming community you'll find. So take time to do that. Um, and then stick around for a couple of days and sign up for one of the pre-conference workshops, and then stick around for a couple of days for Thursday and Friday for the general session. It's a long week, and a lot of people go, "Oh my gosh, you guys are doing too much." I don't know how many people we'll have that will be there for the full week, but you can find the pieces that interest you the most. Go to isasouthern.org, look to see what appeals to you and sign up. Okay.
If I could interject there as well, if you're seeking out, so I'm not from Tennessee where I live now. I'm from the West Coast. And when I left the Western chapter, I came to the Southern chapter and I did not know a lot of the arboriculture community. So what I did was I started going to these events like Skip is saying. And through going to these events and meeting the board specifically, even if you're not in the Southern chapter, every single part of the United States, I'm pretty sure, has some form of ISA chapter. And I would highly recommend that you reach out to those organizations because in the tree community, if you are willing and interested in learning and improving and bettering yourself, if you even just communicate that to your local board, I can almost guarantee you that they will connect you with individuals, board certified master arborists, people that have had experience in the field for a long time, that would be more than happy to even have you shadow them on consultations or on site. That's something that I used to do when I started in the field, and it made my life so much better. So I highly recommend that too.
That's a great tip. And imagine I'll just kind of use you as an example. Like you said, when you moved here, I think the first couple of times I met you was at conferences. And my first thought was, this is impressive. This person is new to this region. She doesn't really know that many people, but she's out shaking hands. I think you were shadowing with somebody and they kind of helped make some introductions. And and then lo and behold, people start to know who you are. And here you are, a member of the board of Southern Chapters. So, you gotta have some desire to get out there. You got to put your hand out and shake some hands. Um, but as long as you're willing to do that, the arborists will be willing to help. They'll put their arm around you and help you out. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to see if there were some other questions.
I don't believe we have any more
Yeah, I
questions.
think I got them.
And I know we're coming up on, it's 1:07 right now, so I know a lot of people had to log off.
Oh, I see Kim out there from North Carolina. Kim, hello. Kim Strazar with North Carolina Urban Forestry Council, another one of our great state organizations.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
Oh, and I also, before we jump off, I also see David Vandergriff on here. David's one of our other board members with ISA Southern Chapter. Hi, David.
David's a legend from Knoxville. If you haven't met him and you're out there, do yourself a favor, meet that guy.
Yeah, yeah. He's another great mentor. Yeah. So Kim, were you going to put something up for folks to get their CEU, or do they just type their name in and their CEU,
Well,
their
for those of you
cert
still
number?
on here, I was gonna put this up sooner, but this
There
is
we go.
just another way for us to tally if you are on here seeking CEUs. If you've registered and your username has already been changed, we will go through and check that. This is just yet another way for us to kind of tally that data. But again, if you're registered, don't feel like you necessarily need to do this, but it helps us on our end. So I'll just keep this up for a few more minutes and also leave y'all some time if you have any other final questions before logging off. I know that we're over time. And Skip or Imagine any other final thoughts that either of you might have.
That is all I have.
Yeah, I'm good. I just had a bunch of questions just in case, like we needed more, but I know we're going over, so Skip answered a lot of them through his presentation.
Imagine you've been around me long enough, you know that I'm not going to go short on a presentation. I'm a
It's
very
called, it's
wordy,
thorough. We want thorough.
I'm a very wordy person.
Ditto. So, I mean, we're just a lethal combo.
Kevin did put something in the chat box about the next webinar with Paul Hickman of Urban Ashes. That should be a great presentation. That, again, that just kind of ties into what I was saying earlier about a lot of areas really getting into this urban wood utilization topic. February 16th with Paul